My name's host Eric. I'm host of a little internet program called Talking with Famous People. It's about everything. Everything you've ever imagined a YouTube channel might be about. That's what this channel's about. And tonight, in which I suspect is going to be a shorter live stream than many of my live streams, I'm going to address the important question: is anxiety a disease of modern life? Well, and my first response to it, the answer is obviously no, it's not a disease at all. Any more than alcoholism is a disease. Obviously, no. Alcoholism is not a disease, and neither is anxiety. Anxiety is an experience. Alcoholism is I'm not sure what it is, a behavioral disorder of some sort. Tom Sawyer 4. Hey, Eric. Hey, Tom Sawyer 4. How are you tonight? I hope you're doing well, but probably my hoping that won't do you much good. Anyway, no, alcoholism is not a disease, for sure. As somebody who quit drinking completely, had to abstain completely from it in order to have a good life, um, and who quit by way of Alcoholics Anonymous, and who's heard plenty of nonsense about the subject, I can assure you it is not a disease, and any sane person would assure you the same thing, because the word disease means something specific. Uh, anyhow, what about, but in a metaphorical sense, is anxiety a feature of modern life that's distinct from the kind of experience of life that our forebears experienced? So, obviously, throughout human history, people have had things to be anxious about potentially. Um, no less so than today, maybe more so, maybe equally so. It depends. It's like it's hard to measure it quantitatively, because like I think, and one of the ways in which olden days life created anxiety was you you had to be prepared by and large, unless you were in a major city. Even then, um, you couldn't as easily or as well rely upon society's protocols of helping each other as you can now. If I'm off hiking and I break my leg now and I'm in an isolated location, I'll get airlifted to a hospital, right? That's not going to happen in the olden days. So, in some ways, in the olden days, there was inherently more anxiety built into life. Were on your own more, didn't have carry around communication devices, etc. But another way, I think there was probably less anxiety because, well, it, some of it has to do with electrical lighting. I get the feeling, although this may be projecting kind of a conscious outside frame of reference, but regardless, I get the feeling that if you're kind of compelled to adhere to the rhythms of the earth because it's too dark at night to do stuff, um, there's an acceptance of, well, whatever it is going to have to wait till morning, like that kind of thing. It doesn't really exist anymore. There's this capacity of the world to expect of you to function at any time, anywhere, on call 24/7. Um, there's additionally an increased awareness of a myriad number of various narratives about the world, um, many of which are anxiety inducing narratives that people just didn't have access to or weren't available or didn't exist back in the olden days. So sure, in the for all of human history since the printed word, like since the printing press at least, there has been an abundance of narratives and books and such, but that's not nearly the same thing as the instantaneous interactive news environment of the status quo. So I'm feeling anxious right now, you know, but it's kind of specific to my circumstances in the moment. Nevertheless, I'm struck as I feel these kind of anxieties that with the with the ways in which like concerns, worries can be of vastly different scope and quality, scale and quality. Um, but the anxiety you feel will adjust to whatever's normalized. Like the things I'm feeling anxious about not a super long time ago would have seemed like dream dream life, not problems to feel anxious about, right? Is what you're comparing against is the status quo. And it's not exactly a problem that I have to feel anxious about, but um, just big stuff in the works, concerns about basically anxiety about selling the house, how long will it sit on the market, will we get what we put into it back? If not, how much of a hit are we going to take, etc. How soon are these people going to do whatever? The thing is, every time I see these people across the street, it just triggers anxiety. Hopefully, they'll be gone after this week for a while. They came up on Thanksgiving week to sort of visit their property, but hopefully, they now disappear for a long time until after we sell the house. Eric, have you seen the scene in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, a movie about a car and a man and his children and the soon-to-be wife, but specifically the scene where he in a lavish series of devices to cook breakfast? I have a vague recollection of it. I've seen it as a child, but I can't say I entirely recognize the scene you're talking about. Certainly, I think that what you might call wrongness self stimulation syndrome probably would be called fairly exclusive to modern life. Wrongness self stimulation syndrome is exemplified by people who who are seeking basically language that demonizes their boogeyman, and people who research stuff about how Hunter Biden did this, or research stuff about how um, Obama did that, or Trump did that. I mean, Trump's a bit of a different case because he actually engaged in like such brazen disregard for rule of law applying to him as president as well. It was just kind of a bit more of a case there, you know. But like, if you're if you're finding articles about how Diane Feinstein and the Meows are meowing, or if you're finding articles about how you know, I mean, there's not many like rabbit holes of conservative conspiracy. Like, in other words, what secret bullshit is Meow up to now in the status quo, in the contemporary status quo, because the Republicans just seem completely incompetent. It's hard to imagine they're in charge of some secret cabal. And besides which, people who self-identify as conservative are more likely to see encroaching change as representative of some kind of intentional outcome by a puppet master than are people who uh, who favor change, going to see resistance to it as indicative of a puppet master. I think that's just kind of implicit in the mechanics of the thing. But regardless, we can think of examples where plenty of lefties have conspiracy theoried the right, plenty of righties conspiracy theoried the left. The point being, in any instance, you've got society m- more vigorously by an indescribably large amount engaged in boogeymanning and platypusing than ever before in human history. Because it's like it's like a machine that feeds itself, right? People seek out this feeling of seeing into a secret meow that explains everything. If we just blow it open, then the natural goodness of life would return or something. And they just get caught up in these stories without ever even linking back to their own lives usually. Like, wait a second, am I really being controlled by the government that much? Kerfuffle is the best word in politics. Hi, Rachel, darling. So it's interesting that some kinds of anxiety for me linked to procrastination, others definitely do not. The anxiety I'm feeling now is more likely to link to fast and decisive action in its worst incarnation, hasty, and its best incarnation, necessarily fast and decisive. And whereas other kinds of anxiety consistently links to procrastination. But these people who and on the hill across the street, that just triggers like call to action anxiety. I just want to see things move forward. I want to get this thing sold as fast as possible, etc. Obviously, we're gonna have to do the calculation to determine what the right price point is to consider both factors of a relatively quick sale, the fact that we don't need to sell it instantly, and you know, figure out the right way to split that difference, etc. Forced engagement scenario. Well, I mean, the one thing that Rachel and I both seem to understand right away. Yeah, we are. We are selling the existing house. And and I guess I'll explain why. At some point, I'm going to stop discussing this point because I don't want any prospective buyers to encounter it. But we learned just a couple of days ago, a few days ago, that some people who either bought or already owned the hill across the street are planning on building a house on it. And this was something that right out the gate when we moved in, we wanted to make sure we had addressed, prevented, made sure it didn't happen. We tried to buy the hill across the street. We talked to multiple people about it. We're basically informed, like, nah, I was going to develop it. I don't even know where you'd build up on there. It's not even a place to build, etc. Rachel and I felt very confident that, okay, well, they're not going to build we don't need to worry about somebody building above us on the hill across the street, looking down on our house. Well, when we discovered that that was going to happen, neither Rachel or I don't think, seriously considered for longer than 5 minutes that we might stay in this house. I think we both were immediately thought, oh, we have to sell this house now. We have to sell it now because once they start construction, we're not going to be able to sell it during construction across the street, not for anywhere what we paid for it. If we sell it right now, we probably get back what we paid for it, and maybe even a little more. Who knows? Um, and let the construction across the street be the buyer's problem. Frankly, I asked the realtor if we have to legally disclose that I know that I quote unquote know that at some point in the next year or so, construction will begin across the street. Right. Well, I don't think this our house is depreciated at all. I think the property stayed flat, um, but we're gonna sell it before the construction across the street does depreciate the value of the house, which it probably would, even once it's all done. So, right, we're gonna sell now. We're gonna sell as quickly as possible. I mean, this anxiety I'm talking about links to this shit across the street. That's what I'm talking about. Obviously, we don't know how long this house is going to sit on the market for, and or, whenever you sell a house, you need to think hard about how to what to list it at, um, so that you have a decent chance of getting maximum dollar for it, but also don't end up with something that's stagnant on the market for 180 days. Then you have to drop the price, etc. Uh, Trying to find that sweet spot is a tricky calculation. But, today we started looking at some other stuff on Zillow that's like fixer uppers that I consider to be underpriced. And we're looking to pick those up, maybe one or maybe more of them as properties will turn into rentals. So, um, that's the deal. But it's, I suspect we would eventually soon, not super down the road, have sold this place anyway, simply because it's it's not really a house designed for a couple, you know? It's a house designed for maximizing the ability of people to stay here. It's like a vacation house. Yeah, well, we looked at Zillow. I looked at the comps. I mean, based on seeing, it's like I look at the places that are in the neighborhood that are cheaper than us. I think, okay, we can get what we paid for it. When I look at the places in the neighborhood that are more expensive than us, I think, I hope we can get what we paid for it. Yes, your comps. They're yours, Rubinar. They belong to you. I tell you what else belongs to you. All the Christmas magic in your heart doesn't belong to anybody else but you and Santa. Keep that in mind. Originally, I just watched the end of Elf. Kind of pleasant to watch a holiday classic on television. Rather a cozy experience. It is brutally, bitterly, majorly cold right now outside. Colder than you can shake a stick at. Namely, it's under 40 degrees. When we got home in the car said 36. I actually think the cars, when it comes to cold, I think the car is more accurate than the computer Microsoft thing, which sometimes it seems like hasn't updated in hours. But yeah. So Florida is defeating Florida State at the moment, but they're only up by a point. But that would be a shocking upset. Tomorrow there will likely be open houses around town. Maybe you two should go on some real estate tours minus a realtor just for the gander of what's out there up close and personal. Well, yeah, I thought about driving by some houses today, but I also emailed our realtor saying I want to look at these three properties specifically. And I shared with them the links to the three I wanted to look at. Like one of them's 150,000 for what looks like, it's a fixer upper, but it looks like it seems like a pretty great deal. Like, it also seems like they have a lot of junk kind of lying around that you have to take away. But if you're saving that much on the purchase price, how much can it cost to get somebody to come carry your junk to the dump? And we did do the drive by the property and look at it thing the other night. Just Rachel and I, after dark, we drove up to this uh, plot of land that formerly had a house on it, but that had burned down in the recent fires. And we just drove up there. It was a dirt road, and yiggity ya, yuggity you. It was a great piece of land, but ultimately it was like 120 or something, and there was no structure on it. It did have septic already installed and a well, but no structure. 150 for an equivalent amount of land. I think it's like 5 point some acres or something. Uh, with a 3 bedroom, 1 bath house on it or something like that. Even if it does require a lot of work, I mean, it just seems like a great investment opportunity. Get it all cleaned up, rent it. If you can get it rentable, I'm sure you could get it rentable for 50 grand. And you're looking at $200,000 investment, and and a rental that looks to bring in 2 grand a month. That's a hell of a good return on your investment. That's over 10% a year. Seems like a sensible thing to do. But there's pitfalls. Well, what if it ends up costing more than 50,000 to get it up to snuff? Well, then maybe we've placed the level of snuff too high. I mean, I've thought about that. Mrs. Mom, like, thought about buying land and putting it in a property, but after talking to the realtor, I realized by far the most sensible thing to do is to buy an existing property, because you don't have to get any building permits. The You can get more accomplished in terms of quality with a normal single family structure. Um, well, again, Mrs. Mom, there are very good reasons to not build here. Number one, you have to drill a well. Number two, you have to put in septic. If you purchase land with the intent of putting one of those little houses up, like I said, the total cost for the land, say 120, you can get the whole house for not that much more. And yeah, well, not bad news so much. It's really good news. We have a plan. So what I don't need, Winston's mom, is is suggestions of possible changes to the plan, because it's very difficult for me to have a plan in the first place. I have clarity about exactly what I'm going to do. I see and exactly why. I see these undervalued properties here in Mariposa and I recognize that there there's a lot of overall benefit to the whole thing, the way I'm envisioning it here, as I just articulated, with the fact that if you can put 200 grand into a home and get 25 a year in rent for it, um, that's an insanely good return on investment. So hard to uh, hard to argue with those numbers. No, I'm figuring 2 grand a month in rent. Not for the place I'm talking about, right? We're talking about getting uh fixer upper properties that are underpriced. Like, there's one for 170 I saw that says on it, cash offers only. All come with all offers considered. Uh Seller highly motivated to sell. Well, when you see a situation like that, you think, okay, this is something that that we um, it's something that we should look at because, first of all, anybody who's trying to get a bank loan is already out of the market for this home. Passive income is the best income. Is that what you mean by rent income is passive income? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out a way to both, I mean, most of all, what I'm doing is trying to make sure that I have existing resources positioned such that on balance, I create a positive cash flow so that we're not eating through the inheritance, but rather growing it. I have, I have written down some things in this little notebook here. It's called PCFB1. That's Positive Cash Flow Book One. I'm assuming I'll fill these things with notes about various properties and stuff in my considerations of it. Of course, first I did framework. The meta frame is a family boat, and we all are going to sink or swim with it. So, sink or float. So, we need to make a sturdy boat. The frame is permanent financial security. Criterion is positive cash flow. Plan text. Buy cheap properties, rent them. Obtain stable monthly income, outpacing expenses. That's the framework. Then I have a bunch of specific financial questions about our existing finances. I need to ask Delilah. I mean, it's not set in stone because I haven't. The only thing that I've had the conversation with Delilah about is selling this house. That's set in stone. But if I talk to her and she's like, "Well, actually, Dad, I started doing this thing here and it's producing better returns than what you're talking about," then okay, great. I don't think that's going to happen, but you never know. Well, I'm feeling somewhat less anxious than I was earlier, in part, but not exclusively but in part because I take half clumping. So that helps you to feel better, obviously. If you're feeling a little anxious, feeling a little stressed, worrying about the backside, worrying about the chest, worrying about the facts I told you on the test, well, if that's the case, then I don't know what to say. The point is, yeah, obviously, modern life, there's a lot more ways you can feel anxiety about nothing really, about things that aren't real. But there's also probably a lot less existential anxiety. Like, you're probably less worried nowadays that you're going to be murdered when you ride your horse from your house to your cousin's house 6 miles down the road. Not so many highwaymen anymore. But But I suspect that people worry more about global concerns than they could ever have dreamed of worrying about them a long time ago. Like, I don't think people were particularly worried about pollution or deforestation or whatever until the population got large enough for for the world to get small, you know. So I think there's anxiety about the environment and humanity's relationship with technology and the natural world that exists now, that even if there were some form of it in the past, like there's probably always been a movement of Luddites who are opposing progress technologically. But I think humanity is both empowered to be as conflicted as it's ever been about its relationship with the world by virtue of the fact that it's as stable and prosperous as it's ever been, even though it doesn't seem like it right now with all the Israel, Palestine, China, Taiwan, Russia, Ukraine stuff going on. It certainly doesn't seem like it right now, but in actuality, the world's the most stable and predictable that it's ever been. You're not an illustrator, you're a brander. That means that you don't draw on your cows, you burn icons into their skin. The reason I ask is that while you are looking around, caricatures can be a wonderful income pawn stream. People really dig caricatures of themselves. Pay a pretty penny for one. Hmm. Well, maybe that's what I should do, Winston's mom. My caricature will not look like whoever it's a character of, except in the so far as it'll have a head and a neck and ears and stuff like that. But maybe if I could convince the person that actually this is what they look like before they see the picture, then when they do see it, they'll be like, well, maybe I do look like that. It's like that. You remember that? Do you remember that hilarious news thing where they showed this police sketch and it looked like a elementary school kid had drawn it? The guy with the little hat on. It's a funny video. I'm unreasonably tired given the fact that it's 7:13 in the evening. But knowing that more that big changes are afoot and that you can't say for sure how easy it's going to be to sell your house, or whether you're going to be able to get what you hope to get out of it, miggity meow, that can cause that can make a good man go bad. Please, please, please let me get what I want. God knows it would be the first time. Really, Morrissey? The very first time you've ever gotten what you wanted. Maybe not enough BS or whatever. Oh, B's, B vitamins. I bet you mean by that. You were aware you were feeling anxious for no reason. I mean, the thing is you can always find reasons to be anxious. It, the question is generally like, is my anxiety warranted specific to something, and am I and can I do anything about it? Versus, is it what's called generalized anxiety? That's the kind of anxiety I don't like. Is when I just feel generally anxious without anything about nothing in particular. Do I think AI poses a threat to humanity? No, not at all. Not even a little bit. Because it should just be called like I guess it's artificial intelligence in some way, but I don't know what else to call it besides artificial intelligence. FWIW. Eric, I'm looking into trying to acquire a rental property too. There's a loan dedicated to getting a new property launched, but you just need to sell it. No, I'm not going to be getting any bank loans. New group. It's a lot easier to make money on a rental property and have it actually provide a monthly income for you if you own the property free and clear, obviously. It's pretty challenging business proposition if you're paying a mortgage for it to be profitable. It's like if the people who are renting it can afford to pay more than you're paying for it on a mortgage per month, then why aren't they mortgaging it themselves? That's the problem, right? You can only you can only charge rent. You have to have the only way that you can do that really is if you've got a large amount of down payment, a little bit of loan, but we're not doing that. We're doing that. We're coming in all cash. It's the DSCR loan. How does one post memes on YouTube chat? But I don't know. I don't know how one posts memes on YouTube chats, but so it's like the thing is currently resources are in the portfolio. So we're heavily invested in the markets. Conservatively invested and heavily invested in the markets. One can imagine that the value of one's investment goes up by more than the value of a house will, maybe by a number of percentage points more. But let's say your stocks go up in value 10%. Well, that's great, but they're not likely to pay in dividends 10% of the total value, right? Yeah. Life's, you know, part of the anxiety of modern life is we're operating in a world where we expect various things as like bottom level minimum comfort acceptability. And the number of those things keeps growing so that, if you have just a studio apartment with a small TV and a heater and a fan, you feel like, oh, this is very difficult to live in such under such lean conditions. Of course, for lots of periods of human history, from almost all of human history, they didn't have things like TVs and lights and refrigerators and etc. Well, yes. I mean, I have a plan to do that, and I'm not I'm not unwilling to hear better plans, but oh my god, this fucking stupid anti-vape commercial. California suck my ass. You and your nanny state bullshit is just so sickening. Yeah, you were an important kitty. We've discussed this many times. Well, sure, colors pay, but you can go to a financial planner and stuff, but and annuitize things and do various things like that. But what I'm looking for is ultimately a um, a a very stable, although not guaranteed, but stable and reliable way to attain monthly income outpacing expenditures. In other words, to attain a positive cash flow. So, um, and I feel like I've figured a way to do that. It's very plausible and it should work. But of course, you can only do that as long as you have sufficient capital to do that. And what I don't want to do is fritter away a bunch of capital before making a decision, and yada yada. We need to pull the trigger on this while we've got the resources to set up sufficient rentals to outpace our expenditures, etc. So that's what we will be doing. And a critical component in the whole thing ultimately is selling this house. Um, Rachel and I are gonna live in a more modest home, and that'll free up some additional capital to see to it that we get we're able to get sufficient number of properties to make this work. No one wants to get rich slow, said Warren Buffett. The idea is to spend less than one has, but yeah, well, I mean, the point is, it's as simple as this. Happiness is a positive cash flow. If you've got a positive cash flow, it doesn't matter if you're getting rich slow or quick, because it means you're living as you naturally do, spending whatever money you naturally spend, and every month getting a little richer. Plus, the thing to remember is in each of the properties owned, the money you put into it initially, it's very unlikely to go down in value. Mariposa County is already underpriced. I don't want a loan though, Carlos Paeva. I mean, a loan is a terrible idea. Why would I want to get a loan? And additionally, the point is you want your capital to produce a monthly income outpacing expenses. What you're talking about are investing in things that you're relying upon capital gains to take profits from, right? In which case you have a very complicated relationship with your principal and your expenditure monies. But yeah, I don't. It makes zero sense to get a loan on stocks and pay interest on it. Why would you just not um, sell the stocks and use that money and not pay any interest? Diversifying is good here because you can always pay yourself with what's not so bad. I don't think you're understanding the benefits of property ownership, Carlos Paeva. When you buy these properties, your investment of the property is you can get that out. The downside is it's slower to get out because you got to sell a property, right? But the upside is the property will appreciate. But the most significant upside is you're not relying on something iffy like dividends, um, and you're not relying on simply capital gains to make money. The all the returns on it that are most important are is in fact rendered directly into monthly income. The appreciation on the property is not what you're counting on to generate payment, and you don't have to worry about paying yourself. You get paid. Well, I know you pay taxes on stocks, you pay taxes on capital gains on anything, right? And but only some of the portfolio is subject to taxes. Some of it is tax sheltered. And regardless, the point is you need to get money, you need to get your paper money into real money. The problem with stocks is there's always this hesitancy to take profits, right? Because then you have to pay capital gains. Yeah. Right, but Carlos Paiva, you're not hearing me, obviously. The goal is to get the money out of the portfolio and into something that produces a reliable, regular monthly income and doesn't rely on capital gains for profit. Is this not, is it difficult for you to hear me or what? And you have to pay those taxes at some point, right? Obviously, we will we will move the tax shelter stuff first. We will liquidate that first, you know. So, and most importantly, or rather importantly as well, I understand property and landlording and that stuff. My parents did it. My grandmother did it. I helped with it. It's conceptually fairly straightforward, and it doesn't require a lot of ongoing um, sell this, move this, meow, 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 right? Once it's set up, it just meows. I'll live here in the county. I can do, you know, all the normal property management stuff myself. Obviously, I would hire like handyman to fix stuff and so forth, but I wouldn't need to hire property managers, which is another way that cuts into your possible profits from rentals. The only the only real scenario in which rentals are actually the best investment is a situation like mine, where every rental you own free and clear. You bought it up undervalued, fixed it to rental ready, and therefore, and also have low property taxes we do in Mariposa County, etc. So that you have none of the various things that eat away um at your profit that that normally landlords have if they don't own the property free and clear. Hi, kitty. But why get a loan on your portfolio, Carlos? You know, it's you can't get a loan on the paper value of it. You get a loan on like 70% of that or something. And what you're banking on is that in that case is that you're betting that the value of the stocks you hold on to increases at a faster rate. In other words, it appreciates at a higher percentage rate than the rate you're paying in interest. That's just like you got to have a very good reason to do that, to think that's going to happen. It, it's it also just makes the whole financial business much more complicated. Like the last thing I want to do is deal with the bank, and the last thing I want to do I have to be paying attention to these various. Okay, I gotta pay this much in meow, and then I get this much here, and then I want it simplified and streamlined as much as possible so that I can understand it easily, and the linkage between the investment and the income is straightforward. Straightforward like Blake Gold. There are other particular reasons for what I'm doing that are specific to Mariposa. I really believe this is a good county to invest in. The one thing that will probably always be increasingly difficult to find, especially in California, is low density, rural ish place that you actually want to live. Not like the middle of the desert, you know? Mariposa has a history of rigorously defending its low density zonings and stuff. Um, I believe wholeheartedly that it's kind of everybody's dream to at least, if not move to the country, have like a country house or something. It's hard to find such a thing in California, but it's the closest you get around here. Plus, we're buying and still in the relatively close aftermath of those big fires, which brought down value of properties temporarily, but the forest grows back, you know. Like, one thing I know for sure is that the ratio of investment into a property to rent gotten out of it is way lower here than it is in LA, which is good for the landlord. It is cold diddly old. You want me to watch you eat some more? But I've watched you eat so much already. All right, I'll watch you eat. We will go in the kitchen and I will watch you eat. I will use my eyes. I will watch you eat. And we will both feel better about the whole thing tomorrow. So, Florida State is retaking the lead 17-15. There's only less than 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. If Florida could somehow pull off this upset, it would be huge. It would be the shock of the season, really. Florida State being this close to making the college football playoffs and then losing to lowly Florida, comparatively lowly Florida, in their rivalry game on the last week of the season. That would be devastating to Seminole fans. But currently, in line for the college football playoff, we've got undefeated Michigan, undefeated Georgia, undefeated Florida State, undefeated Washington. But Georgia might lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game. Florida State might lose tonight. Washington almost certainly will lose in the Pac-12 championship game. Now, let's say Florida State wins. Michigan doesn't have another regular season game to play. It doesn't have a conference championship game, I don't think. And so they're in. Georgia, even if it loses to one-loss Alabama, might still be in. But let's assume Georgia beats Alabama. They're in. So then, if Florida State wins, they're in. And that leaves a battle for the fourth spot between Oregon, with one loss, having beaten Washington, presumably in the Pac-12 championship game, and Ohio State, whose only loss is to Michigan. If Georgia loses in the SEC championship game, then you've got 4 one-loss teams competing for 2 spots, assuming Florida State wins. Namely, Oregon, Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. In that scenario, there's a decent chance they take one of the SEC teams in Ohio State or one of the SEC teams in Oregon. I'm not sure what the selection committee would value more: Michigan's win over Ohio State 2-3, or Oregon's Pac-12 championship win over Washington, which I believe is 6-4. So interesting. A lot of interesting things at stake here at the end of this Florida State game. No, I don't think real estate will go down, because the reason it won't go down is because in part because so much housing is being used for non-long-term housing purposes, vacation rentals, Airbnbs, whatever. And then there's a bunch of other housing that is owned by various investors but is just sitting vacant. And the population is not, I mean, overall, globally, the population is increasing. In the United States, I'm not sure what the demographics are right now, but even if it is going down, it's not going down by much. And while people are exiting California at the moment, a lot of that exiting California has to do with two specific problems. One, homelessness and the general decay of the cities, and two, the drought. But the drought's now over, and with the exodus of people from California, presumably urban decay will improve a little bit. Regardless, like, interstate moving will end up balancing out. The states that have a bunch of immigrants from California will start to have some of the problems of California, probably. Looks like Florida State's got this game won. They're up by 8, but they still have an extra point to kick. If they kick that, they'll be up by 2 scores with less than 3 minutes remaining. It seems unlikely Florida will be able to come back from that. Let's see if Florida can mount a comeback. I don't think so, but we'll see. .216 left, down by 9. Florida has the ball, 3rd and 19 already. So I don't think any comeback is in the cards for the old Florida Gators tonight. So I definitely don't think that Florida State is going to lose in the ACC championship game, but it's possible. I'm assuming there is an ACC championship game. Watch out. sack, fumble, fourth and God knows what, 30, fourth and 30 for Florida. 2 minutes left, down by 9. I say 0.001% chance of winning. Clemson is beating South Carolina. So it might be Clemson versus Florida State in the ACC championship game. I'm not sure. So that's the end of that game. Good for Florida State, I guess. I don't love that, but I can live with it. Georgia pulled away from Georgia Tech, of course. No surprise there. NC State beating University of North Carolina. Kansas State beating Iowa State. Biggest shock of the day was Kentucky beat Louisville. Louisville was ranked at 10 with one loss. Kentucky had started off strong, but then had a tough stretch in the SEC. Had lost a few in a row, and I didn't think Kentucky was going to beat Louisville, but they did. Alabama squeaked it out over Auburn. Tennessee whooped up on Vanderbilt, always the whipping boy of the SEC. Arizona, who's come on so strong after a rough beginning to the season, is now 9-3 and ranked 15th they're 15th before today's game. Now 9-3. So they're third in the Pac-12. That's a really strong regular season for Arizona. And in today's game, Arizona's quarterback threw for 527 yards. That's quite a few yards. So, we'll see what Arizona ends up being ranked at. Arizona, the Wildcats lost their bid to play Washington in the Pac-12 title game with number 6 Oregon's win over number 15 Oregon State Friday night. Arizona will play in its first bowl game since 2017. Well, good for them. Good for them. I'm so proud of you, Arizona. So we'll look at the college football full scoreboard. And we'll see what the late games are. I might watch a little bit of start of one of the late games, but I usually don't stay up for it all. Fresno State is playing against San Diego State. I guess I'll watch that game, but Fresno State really disappointed me. After starting off, I think 7-0, they've lost 3 of the last 4. Pretty shitty. They lost to San Jose State, New Mexico, and Wyoming. It should win today, but I don't think really the Bulldogs are 5th in the Mountain West at 4-3. All their losses are in conference, so they'll go to a bowl game. But earlier in the season, it's like, ooh, they could go undefeated. No, they're not going undefeated. Iowa squeaked past Nebraska. Poor Nebraska, they can't seem to get their act together. Missouri walloped Arkansas. Texas destroyed Texas Tech. Penn State whomped up on Michigan State. Oregon only beat Oregon State 31-7. I'm surprised they didn't score more in that game. Must have been weather. Well, okay. So, I guess what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. I thought you were about to say they threw the game for $500. No, threw for 500 plus yards. So, it's pretty stagnant, is right, Carlos Paiva. Well, I'm sorry, Kiara, but I'm ready to settle in, watch a little bit of the late football game, and go to bed. I'm really tired. I feel like emotionally tired because there's lots of stuff going on. I'm trying to figure stuff out and big important decisions, etc. So I'll see you all tomorrow. I will assuredly live stream in the morning tomorrow. I usually do anyway. So I love you all. Thank you for being here. Sleep well and dream of eating plenty of cheese.